Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so honored to be here. I'm honored to be sharing the stage with these wonderful human beings and to be sharing this weekend here with you. It's absolutely fantastic to be gathered here in Portland by the Willamette River. The Willamette, thank you. I want to be corrected again when I want to acknowledge the Indigenous people of this area who continue to live here. And once again, I turned to the internet as a source of information and learned that the Chinookan people, there are many different nations here, continue to live here. And I just want to acknowledge where we are gathered. My name is Severn Cullis-Suzuki. I'm from Canada. My mother is Tara Cullis. She was born in Wootton-Under-Edge in Gloucestershire, England. She's an immigrant to Canada. My father is David Suzuki, a third-generation Japanese Canadian. His grandparents emigrated from Aichi Prefecture and from Kumamoto Prefecture. My sister is Sarika Cullis-Suzuki, and that is the culture that I come from is from my family, this very Canadian family. We're very proud of being Canadian. We take our responsibility as engaged citizens very seriously. We are an activist family, as some of you know, and we have learned a lot about what it means to take responsibility, what it means to take root from Indigenous peoples who've taken us in as family on the west coast of Canada. And so I titled my talk, Our Common Ground. Our Common Ground was the title of a group that my mother formed when I was in grade 4. Grade 4 in Canada is when you learn in your social studies class, this is when in Canadian public school curricula about First Nations or Indigenous people in Canada. And my parents had many friends in First Nations villages in British Columbia and across the country. And so growing up, I even by grade 4, I had already spent a lot of time with Kwakwaka'wakw people in Alert Bay, with Hiltsuk aunties and uncles in Bella Bella, and with Haida elders in Haida Gwaii. And even by that time, it had happened to me several times in my life. My sister and I were put to sleep on the benches of the great big house in Alert Bay during a potlatch so that my parents could stay and continue to watch the ceremonies and the work that was done till 7 in the morning. The potlatch was already a deep part of my understanding of how some people conducted their business. And the potlatch, an incredible West Coast tradition in several different First Nations. Now, as an adult, I understand it is a radically different system of economics and distribution of wealth that continues to exist today. And for those of you who might not know of the potlatch, it's this incredible process of rising in a community's esteem by giving all your wealth away. And so a chief and his family and his clan will save up money for years, and then finally they will throw a potlatch. This could be 1, 2, 3 days long, which are feasts for their community with a lot of different interactions, important interactions like the transmission of names, of rights for different resources. And rights always is partnered extremely closely with responsibilities. Grand Chief Ed John says, everybody's talking about rights these days. We never used to talk about rights. We talked about responsibilities. And this is where the work is done publicly on the floor in the big house. And all of the people who are attending, all the people who are sitting around, they are paid by the chief and his clan, paid as witnesses to see, to remember the interactions that went on. And so at the end of these incredible nights where there is ceremony, where there's transactions, where there's performances. At the end of the night, a huge pile of gifts of wealth, physical, material wealth, will be piled high in the floor of the gymnasium or the longhouse or the big house, and it will all be given away. So in grade 4, I came home from school, and I told my mom what I'd been learning about. That I learned that there used to be Indigenous people that lived in British Columbia. And they used to do this thing called the potlatch, and they used to carve totem poles. They used to live in British Columbia in Canada. And so I came home and I just couldn't understand this. Like, why did these textbooks act like this was ancient history? I mean, this is happening today. This is, current. And so, I just told my mom about what I was learning. And my mother is, one of those competent people that believes in taking responsibility, and she's done this my whole life, just said about very practically about, what are we going to do about this? Well, we'll just start organizing. And she got her girlfriends together, and they formed our common ground. Her girlfriends were Indigenous and non-Indigenous women, mothers, who got together and started brainstorming on how they could deal with this erasure of Indigenous peoples in the school system. And they started rewriting the textbooks. And then she organized for her friends who had a lot of Indigenous knowledge to come and speak in our school and talk to our social studies class. And she organized for her dear friend Vera Cranmer to come to our class and tell us about what it was like to be Kwakwakiwak and tell us about things like residential schools. Residential schools, for if you don't know, these were funded by the Canadian and the American governments, happened here as well, administered by the Catholic and Anglican churches of Canada. And this was a program from the late 1800s until very recent history. The last one closed in 1996 in Canada, where children were forcibly taken from their communities and put into these schools that were often very, very far away, like provinces and provinces away, and not allowed to practice their culture, not allowed to talk to one another in the language or to be with any siblings. They died in droves, and the graveyards behind the schools were filled. This experience had a big impression on me as a 4th grader. I learned 2 very important life lessons. I learned, first one, that what you read in the textbooks isn't necessarily the truth. That was a very important lesson as a child. And the second, equally important, I learned that you can band together with your friends and you can change what's taught as the truth. Now, I wanted to get into so many issues here because this conference has truly brought up so many different aspects of something that is systematically wrong, which is our globalized economy, and the form that the way that the world has now become organized. But I wanted to zero in on the relationships between environmentalists and Indigenous peoples. I've been branded an environmentalist my whole life. But truly, I feel like an advocate for intergenerational justice. This is something I feel really like an engaged citizen because I believe in social equity, I believe in social justice and democracy and all these good things. But I believe that we, and I'm saying we as in the environmental movement now, we really need a deep understanding of why Indigenous perspectives, worldviews, relationships to the world are absolutely fundamental to our achieving any sort of real harmony with this earth. And I was so inspired by Derek Rasmussen's presentation yesterday really struck me because he spoke to it. We all originally come from Indigenous societies. We all come from somewhere. Indigenous means, the word Indigenous means originating or occurring naturally in a particular place. Well, guess what? Human beings are some of the natives of planet Earth. We are indigenous to this planet. We come from nowhere else. And even today, as we live in a completely dehumanized world, we still depend on air, water, the earth for providing our food, all of the food that we eat came from life. Even oil, even fossil fuels came from life millions of years ago. And even though we are denying these realities, we're denying it as hard as we can, as vigorously as we can, we are from this earth. Indigenous people are the ones that still today, by and large, have maintained the relationships with the earth that have allowed us to survive for millennia. The relationships include hard-earned protocols and rules for how to be a human being, how to conduct your culture, how to conduct your spirituality, how to conduct your resource management so that you won't eat up all your resources and be starving next winter, or in 10 winters, or in 100 winters. And you know, I say hard-earned. Indigenous people, human beings, are not saints. It's not because people are noble savages that want to do good to other creatures. This is survival. This is hard-earned wisdom. There were droughts, there were famines, there were times when people harvested too much and people died. And that memory has been preserved and embedded in cultural practices. Today we have a monolithic, dehumanizing economic structure that dictates global culture. And we've done this in such a short time. It has precipitated a period that we are now living through, an incredible bottleneck of diversity. Diversity on all different levels. Diversity not just of economic systems, diversity also, of course, of biological creatures, and diversity of cultures and the ethnosphere. Indigenous peoples are the keepers of our identity as human beings, as natives of this planet. They are hanging on, and they are doing it for all of us. I don't think that we have a deep understanding of the dependency of our planet's ecological integrity and on Indigenous identity, Indigenous survival, Indigenous empowerment, Indigenous ideas. So we, as non-Indigenous people, we need to figure out, one, our own identities, and this is a big piece because we have lost who we are. We need to figure out our own identities as humans who come from an Indigenous tradition somewhere. We all come from an Indigenous place. And two, we need to figure out how to be allies with the connection holders. You know what? Scrap that. Allies implies politics, strategy, and negotiation. We've allowed ourselves as activists to become too deep into our different silos, to become professionalized, so we reach out and we say, I think we need to be strategic allies with that group. We have different niches we've institutionalized into. You know what? We have to figure out how to be more than allies. We need to figure out how to be friends. You know what? We need to figure out more than how to be friends. We need to figure out how to be family, because that is what we are. Whether we like it or not, we are family, and this is our home. Thank you.